Hello, I'm Annie Davey. I've been telling Bible stories to children for many years, and I've got some lovely ones to tell you from the New Testament in this section here. If you want to know about the background, where I got some of the background detail from, you can look it up on the web on truthortradition.com or www.korky.info, where we've written a book called Jesus, Faith and Fact. So it's all in there somewhere, but there's some interesting things here which you may not know. You may think you do know the stories, but wait and see. So let's see what we've got. Hello, this is one of the most exciting stories in the New Testament, and I'm really thrilled to be telling it to you today. Of course, it's about this person here. And you remember that after Jesus had died and had come alive again, over 500 people had seen him at any one time, and his disciples were so thrilled that it had really happened. But there was one man in Jerusalem who was really, really angry, and he was furious that they were going around saying that Jesus was alive, and he was going around saying, let's read it together. Jesus is not alive. How dare they preach such rubbish as this? And he was so furious, he was breathing murderous threats, it says in the gospel, that he would have them all killed and got rid of. He had to put a stop to this rubbish immediately. And he did as much as he could to arrest a lot of people who believed in Jesus in Jerusalem. And then he asked the authorities for letters of introduction to the synagogues in Damascus. Well, Damascus was 135 miles away to the north in Syria. Write its name up here, it's still there. And it was actually a gate in the wall of Jerusalem called the Damascus Gate, because the road led out from there all the way 135 miles to Damascus city. And so he got the letters and he set off with some companions. Now 135 miles is a long way, and I think they were probably walking from the way the story is told. So they walked and they walked, probably 5 days, 6 days. They wouldn't have walked on the Sabbath day, which was Saturday, because that was a holy day for the Lord. And as they walked, they got near to the city of Damascus. And quite suddenly, out of the blue, there was an incredible flash of light from heaven. An amazing, huge explosion of light. Difficult to know how best to draw an explosion of light, isn't it? So I put some extra stars on there as well. It was massive. And the man, whose name was he was absolutely knocked to the ground by this incredible flash of light. Let's draw him here, shall we? He was absolutely thunderstruck. It was astonishing. And a voice spoke to him out of the light. And he knew that it was Jesus. He actually saw Jesus, he said later. And Jesus said to him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And he said to him, "Who are you, Lord?" But he knew in his heart of hearts, with a vision like that, and seeing Jesus standing there, that there was no doubt who it was. And Jesus said to him, "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. Now get up and go to Damascus, and you will be told what I want you to do." So Saul got up from the ground and found when he opened his eyes, he couldn't see. He was completely blind. And it was a horrible shock, as you can imagine, not only to have met Jesus, but to also to be blind. And the people who were with him, it says in the Bible, had to lead him by the hand. So there must have been other people there. I don't know how many other people. Probably quite a few, because they travelled together. And they had to lead him by the hand to Damascus because he couldn't see a thing. Now, the people in Damascus who were followers of the way, which is what they called Christians in those days, were worried when they heard that Saul was on his way because they knew that he was still breathing out fire and brimstone and murderous threats against them all, and he wanted to arrest them and take them back to the authorities in Jerusalem. And then they heard that he'd gone blind and that he'd seen Jesus on the road and that he was in a house in Straight Street. And they were quite worried about him because he was dangerous. But Ananias, who was one of them, had a dream. In this vision, God said to him, Ananias, he said, yes, Lord. He said, I've got a job for you. I want you to go to the house of Judas in Straight Street, and there you'll find a man called Saul, and he's blind, but he's had a vision and an answer to prayer that a man called Ananias is coming to lay his hands on him to receive his sight. Ananias said, excuse me, Lord, but you must be joking. This man, surely you know, he'd been killing people in Jerusalem. He's come to Damascus to arrest us. You really want me to go to Straight Street to Judas' house? And God said, that's what I said. So Ananias took a deep breath and he went and knocked on the door of Judas' house in Straight Street. And when Judas opened the door, Ananias said, I'm Ananias. And Judas said, oh, come in. Saul's been expecting you. Amazing. So Ananias went in and he called him Brother Saul, which is rather an extraordinary thing because he was anything but brotherly. And he laid his hands on him and prayed that the Holy Spirit would bring Saul's eyesight back. And when Saul opened his eyes, it says it was as if fish scales dropped away from his eyes. He could see again. And he was so utterly thrilled. And Ananias was amazed too and went back to tell the others. But what happened to Saul was that he was completely transformed. In that moment of seeing Jesus, he understood that he'd been barking up the wrong tree completely. And this is what he said. I see now. Now I understand. You know, that's what you say, isn't it? When you suddenly get something. Oh, I understand. I see. And so he started going to the synagogue to start telling everybody that Jesus was the Son of God. Exactly the opposite of what he had been saying. And he was baptized in the water. And he went to every synagogue in Damascus preaching the good news that Jesus was alive again. They weren't sure about it at all. They were scared of him. Well, they knew what his history was. Was he playing a trick on them? But he wasn't. And in the end, they had to rescue him because the Greek Jews wanted to get rid of him. They said he was dangerous. And when his new friends, the Christians, found out that Saul was going to be killed, they heard about it. They let him down outside the city wall in a basket. That must have been scary, mustn't it? And he got away. And he went to Jerusalem to try to talk to the others, but they didn't really believe he was a sincere person at the time. And then it took Barnabas to say, it's all right. He was the encourager. He said, I'll take you. And he went and explained to the other apostles what had happened to Paul. He was called Saul at the time, but he changed his name to Paul. So we know him as Saint Paul. Now, Paul wrote 14 letters to all the churches in the places that he visited eventually. He did a huge couple of tours of telling people everywhere he went about Jesus. He was so sure that he had met him, and it was a complete transformation. So one of his letters is to the people who lived in Corinth, the Corinthians, and one of the most famous passages, I've copied out a couple of bits of it from The Message by Eugene Peterson, which is a version of the Bible. And it said that what we have to do is trust, hope, and love. Let's fill this bit in, shall we? Trust steadily in God and Hope, it's a long word here. Hope unswervingly, let nothing deter us. And love extravagantly. Isn't that lovely? So hope steadily in God, trust unswervingly, and love extravagantly. But sometimes you'll hear somebody say, well, he had a Damascus Road experience. And now you don't need to wonder what on earth that meant, because you know it's referring to Paul on the Damascus Road when he met Jesus and suddenly his whole life changed. It was a complete transformation. So there you are, a bit of English for you. So instead of preaching that Jesus was not alive and getting really angry with people, you have to cross this word out here. Because he was completely convinced that Jesus was alive, and I am too. So that's the story of somebody having the first Damascus Road experience, and how Paul's life was completely transformed. And he went back to Jerusalem, and the disciples there were quite anxious about meeting him, as you can imagine, when he'd been arresting them and putting them in jail, and some of them had been killed. But Barnabas encouraged them and said, it's all right. He's seen Jesus. He's a different man. He's been transformed. And I know that when people have a Damascus Road experience, it means that their life is completely different from then on. It's suddenly they've understood something that was absolutely amazing, and that's changed their lives. And nobody could have changed more than Saul becoming Paul, could they? So thank you for listening. God bless you. And I hope that you'll read some of his letters sometime, even just a short one. It's full of wisdom and joy and love and hope. So thank you. Bye-bye.